Hello, my name is Heather. Welcome to the Reading Mama, and sorry for the shaky camera and weird angle. I lost my normal filming spot for a baby's bed. So I am still figuring that out, but I thought I would bring you my Sunday video, a very quick one on fairy tales. Now, I am a Christian homeschooler, which kind of lands me in two realms when it comes to fairy tales. There are some who absolutely not, no, that's witchcraft magic. We're not going to touch it. It's evil, demonic, boo. And then there's those who are on the other side who are like, yes, it teaches the ultimate story. I am on the side of that it shows the gospel story, because in a good fairy tale, light wins. Now, we live in an age where not all the fairy tales and all the stories end with light winning or even focus on light winning. There's a whole slew of that. But I think that it is important. And like the I think it's unknown. There's a person out there, there's a quote, so to say, that never be sorry for raising dragon slayers in a time when there are actual dragons. And G.K. Chesterton, C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, all of these people knew the power of fairy tales. And I think sometimes we as Christians get a little discombobulated and out of our minds about it. And for good reason. We don't want to go down and teach our children evil, but the thing is, our children need to know that evil exists, and they need to know that evil, it can and will be conquered. And so we err on the side of fairy tales as education. Now, I will be honest, my husband and I do not see eye to eye on this. He is like, okay, some fairy tales are okay, not all. I am also along that lines, so we are not the hardcore one or the other, but I do think fairy tales are important. And my husband says, okay, go ahead, even though we don't always see eye to eye on it. We have found a nice soft landing for our family, and I can't really describe it on homeschool parents. In some of my homeschool videos, I talk about it, and people are like, but where's the line? I know it when I read it. Some magic, some witchcraft, some evil. I'm like, that went too far. Other times I'm like, nope, that's okay. And it's just what my personal preference is for me and my family. So I'm not here to judge you one way or the other. If you are looking for some people to give you some really hard and great places to know about what to do about fairy tales and why they're important, go check out Brandy Vinsel at Afterthoughts blog, or on School Day Sisters. Check out their fairy tale posts. Check out A Delectable Educations podcast and their thoughts on fairy tales, Literary Life podcast and their thoughts on fairy tales, and The Commonplace Mom with Autumn has some great thoughts on fairy tales. They explain it way better than I could. But needless to say, I'm going to say that we are going to learn the gospel story through fairy tales, because we're going to learn that light triumphs over evil and that it is possible. Now, all that to say, what are some of my favorite fairy tales? There's a million. And I don't have all the books. I actually only have 5 books. We have a ton of picture books, so I mean, probably a lot more than 5. But these are my 5, whatever you call them, compilations. And so I'm going to share them with you. They're not all the prettiest covers. I wish they were, but they're not. I'm still working on it, and I have read all of them except for one. And I am actually working on reading that one. I've read all but 2, and I'm going to be reading both of those this year. So first up, I'm going to share the Charles Perrault fairy tales. So this is the complete fairy tales of Charles Perrault. Sure, I'm not sure that really is true, but it has 11 stories in it. And this particular printing has a few pictures in it, not a lot. Let me see if I can even find one with a picture. Let me turn it around. My kids really liked the Charles Perrault ones. They were short. They're not, these are not long stories. You could read most of them in one sitting, maybe 2 if you have younger kids. These do have a moral at the end of them, and I kind of sometimes read the moral to my kids, sometimes I don't. It just depends what you want. But you have the 11 fairy tales of Charles Perrault, which is the French one. So we have Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, Puss in Boots, The Fairies, Cinderella, Tufty Ricky, Hop on My Thumb, Patient Griselda, Donkey Skin, and The Foolish Wishes. And my kids really, really loved this particular version, and it was enjoyable for us. I'm sure there's other more beautiful printings. I find my books cheap, and that's what I buy a lot of times, especially if I'm using it for homeschool. We actually have already read most of these in previous years, and I realized that the last year and a half, we have not been doing fairy tales. Shame on us. So we are going to be introducing those again here soon. But this was a really great introductory one. One that is often recommended in homeschool circles, at least Charlotte Mason ones, is the Andrew Lang fairy series. Now, he has lots of them. There's like all these different colors. This is the blue book of fairy. And this is not the most pretty copy, but it is a wonderful, good copy. It's from Living Book Press, which I absolutely love. If you are a homeschooler looking for great books, go check out Living Book Press. I get no kickbacks from them. It's just another homeschool family that has some amazing books and some that you've never even heard of. I think there were a few fairy tale ones on there that I was like, ooh, I want those too. The blue fairy book is a very British fairy tale story. And it has some very different ones from, what I grew up with, because, I'm mostly growing up with Disney stories, but there are so many. And my kids really love this. We read through the whole book a few years ago, and it was a really great kind of compilation. And I know right now we're in the middle of Faebruary, which is why I'm sharing all these fairy tales, and people are reading these retellings. Well, some of us don't know them. I listened to one video and she was like, I never heard of Toads and Diamonds. And I was like, oh, I know that one because of this. And there are just some great stories. All the stories have a moral, but it's really awesome. If you're looking for one to read aloud to your kids, then they are great because it's hearing what their take on it, because fairy tales take a different stance when you're an adult versus a kid. A lot of times the things that I would focus on are not the things my kids would focus on. And so I highly recommend reading them aloud if you have kids. But if you're just an adult looking for fairy tales, you can't go wrong with Andrew Lang. I know that his blue book and his red book are the most popular, but he has like a green book and an orange book, and I mean, there's a ton of them. So go check them out. They're more beautiful printings and stuff, but this is a great durable copy, and I really like it. I like that it has some images, not a lot in it, and it's just a good printing. You can see we've used it a few times, and my kids still love it and talk about it. Another one that we love is the English Fairy Tales, and this is a children's classics printing, but it's Joseph Jacobs. And I read it, and my second born read it because she was really loving fairy tales, so I got her this to try something new. It was a pretty hardback I found used. These are getting a little more they get a little more gruesome, okay? These ones they're definitely a little more gruesome than others. Like I said, it's by Joseph Jacobs, who I don't really know. I've not seen anybody else recommend. There are 87 different fairy tales in here, and they are all very, very British. And I'm going to read you the inside kind of the intro, so to speak. And it says, how to get into this book. Knock at the knocker on the door, pull the bell at the side. Then, if you're very quiet, you will hear a teeny tiny voice say through the grating, take down the key. This you will find at the hook at the back. You cannot mistake it, for it has JJ in the words. Put the key in the keyhole, which it fits exactly. Unlock the door and walk in. It's just like cute, quaint little story. At the beginning, it's not all cute, quaint little stories. There's a lot of people being chopped up and other things going on. There's a lot of poetry throughout, which I thought was interesting. It has some illustrations. It has some very strange British stories that I had not, maybe not even just British. I think some of them are Scottish. It just has a couple of them. Like I have one that's like, do not read this, because some of them were a little gruesome. And so I want you to keep that in mind if you are skittish or your children are. Those have some gruesome ones, but it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. And then you can't go wrong with Joseph and Jacob. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. I don't know if this is a great printing or not, but it's the one I have. And this is one that I have not read. I've read portions of. And so my goal this month is to try to read as many of these as I can and start reading them. Maybe even reading them aloud to my kids. I do know Grimm's tend to be a bit gruesome. They're German, okay? They're German stories, and they tend to be a little violent, and that's just the way it is in life, okay? But I know I remember reading Grimm's fairy tales when I was younger, and I always loved it, so I'm excited to get into this. I actually just reread, they called it, what is it, Grizzlybeard? I think that's what his name is in this one. Yeah, King Grizzlybeard, which is called Thrushbeard in other retellings, and I really enjoyed it. They're short, easy chapters, but yeah, that was a good one. And then the other one I'm hoping to read this year, and I'm going to be reading it and then reading aloud to my kids. My oldest has already read, but it's The Arabian Nights. This is by Patrick Cullum. And these are going to be the Middle Eastern stories. And so I'm very excited to read these. I like this particular author for a lot of other books. So I know that I will enjoy his writing, and I think it'll work well. My kids are going to study ancient Middle Eastern history late next year, and so we were gonna add this in, so I'm hoping to read that. My oldest, like I said, has read it. There is another book that we listened to multiple times, and I don't own it. We got it on audiobook by Ian Colfer, I think is how you say his name. But he has a whole series, and we just did his compilation of fairy tales. We didn't read his series for other reasons, but the stories, it's like the Land of Stories, their fairy tale one, phenomenal. And the author reads it, and it is phenomenal reading. They're great. My kids absolutely love those particular fairy tales. So those are my 6 favorite fairy tales that I've read with my kids or plan to read with my kids, and that I have enjoyed myself. If you have any questions, or if you have some fairy tales that you're like, this is a great print, this is a great version, put it below. Let us all know, because fairy tales really can be helpful. Like I said, in that quote, we say we're raising kids in a time of, don't be afraid of raising dragon slayers in a time when there are really dragons. The world is dark and crazy outside, and a lot of us are making jokes about how we're running away into fairy stories and make-believe stories to escape reality. But, you know, they teach us how to deal with reality too. They teach us how light can conquer dark, and let's give our kids those good thoughts to know that it is possible to stand up against evil. Okay, I'm gonna insert something real quick before I end this video. I picked up my Grimm's to start reading while my video was uploading, and I had to share this bit because he says, but I should add a bit of warning. So Matt Haig is the one who did this. I haven't read any of Matt Haig's books. I know he's really popular, so I'm probably going to pick him up next. But here's his warning. He says, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you these fairy tales are sometimes too violent or scary. I mean, they are a bit scary in places, but the best stories always are, aren't they? Some of the most evil and greedy and selfish characters ever in history of stories live and breathe in the pages of this book you are holding. But you can't just have a book full of nice people or they'd have nothing to do. No. The thing I'm going to warn you about is that these fairy tales aren't anything like real life. I'm telling you this just in case you are like a teacher I once had. He told me off about a story I had written that had too many unrealistic things in it. I don't think you were like that. I mean, if you were like that, you'd be holding a book called The Boring Book of Realistic Facts that happen every day instead of the one called Grimm's Fairy Tales. Because here's the truth. These stories aren't realistic. They are far, far, far better than that. And it goes on, but I just wanted to share that intro because it's awesome. And what I love is how he's like saying the opposite of what I just told you, that they are realistic, but they're one and the same, because while they are far, far, far not realistic, they do show us the beauty of life. Because in every story, no matter how fantastical, no matter how crazy and bizarre and out there are these nuggets of truth that ring true to us. That's why they ring true to us, because they talk about the character, they talk about the morals, they talk about life, they talk about such bigger concepts in such a fantastical way. And so I encourage you, not only for you to read these aloud to your kids, but to take time and read them for yourself. And so I'm going to end right here. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a blessed day.